So imagine you're outside on a nice sunny day visiting with family and friends. Imagine also there's word of tornadoes relatively nearby, but not near enough to cause any fear. But suddenly the storms veer off course and come to your area. Then you seek shelter, but then you come out of your shelter and you find out part of your neighborhood has been completely destroyed and there's nothing there anymore. That is what happened in Gerald, Texas on May 27th of 1997. So chances are good most of this audience does not live in an area where any of this could happen. However, it's always good to learn about past events such as this. The Gerald, Texas tornado was one of the most memorable and most destructive in Texas history, with many eerie happenings that haven't happened since. So while I do not have any firsthand experience or knowledge of this situation, it's something that since I found out about it a couple of years ago through a YouTube video that has fascinated me. And since I am fascinated with storms in general, that this was a good topic for me to choose. So first, I will discuss the events kind of like leading up to the storms, and then the day of where it actually did happen. And then second, I will talk about one of the most famous aspects of this tornado, which was the destruction of the Double Creek Estate subdivision in that neighborhood. And then I will talk about what's called the dead man walking myth and the fatalities. So the night prior to this all happening, the National Weather Service issued a slight risk, meaning that there were severe storms possible and tornadoes possible, but they were not thinking such a thing would happen in Gerald, which is southern Texas, and the it did. So it started early around like 5 in the morning, the whole system in Texas, and then it was later in the afternoon when the storm that prompted the tornado was formed around like between 12 and 1 p.m. So it came to Gerald around like 3 p.m., but by that point it was very small and weak, but that would soon change as it grew into an F5 tornado quickly. So now that I've covered the topics of kind of the conditions and hoping that kind of gave you a gist of what that was like, I will talk about the most famous, or one of the most famous aspects, being the Double Creek subdivision. So the Double Creek subdivision was where primarily the tornado set its sights upon. So like the winds were somewhere between like 260 and 300 miles per hour, and there were interviews on this one website that I found with somebody talking about it on the anniversary, where he said even hurricanes don't produce that kind of wind. And then so afterwards the Double Creek Estate subdivision was completely wiped clean. There's nothing left there. There were no survivors of that, and there were around 27 people who lived in the Double Creek subdivision. And so it kind of just hovered around the subdivision for about 15 minutes, and it was strong enough but slow enough that it caused all that damage. So now that we have talked about that part, I will talk about the dead man walking myth and more about the fatalities. So in the Native American community, the there's a dead man walking myth that came into play with this tornado where the two um the two tornadoes that I had mentioned earlier um formed together, and when they did, they looked like a man walking into Gerald. And the myth goes that if you see that tornado, you will die. And the fact that everyone in the subdivision died certainly lends credence to that idea. And along with the subdivision and the myth, that the fatalities are something that are often talked about because of how much you don't see that happen with a lot of other tornadoes. So, like, people in the Double Creek estates, the 27 of them, some of them had to be identified by their dental records because they were so unidentifiable any other way because of how the tornadoes um, got them and how basically their bodies were just so unidentifiable, and there were also animals like cattle and those that like had their skin ripped off because of the sheer power of the tornado. And so so first I discussed the conditions the night before and the day of, and leading up to what would eventually go there. And then second I discussed the Double Creek subdivision touchdown and the destruction of that, and then the dead man walking myth and the fatalities. So I think that even like I said earlier, that even though we in conclusion that even though we may not have any personal connection or know anybody personally, that this is just something that I think we can all learn from, and that it's just like fascinating to learn about, and that we can all just learn something from it.